I'm Wally Nathan, I'm the director of the museum, and we are incredibly honored tonight to have Gregory Crewdson with us. I have intentionally decided I have a sheet I could talk, but I'm not going to. But I do want to introduce three people to you tonight who are here. But I don't know where they're sitting, so they're just going to have to get up. Francine Fleischer is here, who's an artist who's in the exhibition right here. That I want you to all see after during the reception tonight, the dark blue exhibition. And Kevin Miyazaki is here, whose work Perimeter is in the museum, and I want you to see that. And Lisa Sutcliffe is here, who is the new curator of photography at Milwaukee Art Museum. So there she is. Go get her. With that, we're so lucky. Gregory Crewdson.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and I'm pleased to be here on Valentine's Day, I think. I thought I'd just give a kind of overview of my work. I always said that I feel like every artist has one central story to tell, and the task is to attempt to try to tell and retell that story over and over again in visual form, attempting to reinvent it, challenge it. But at the core, the central issues, the central fascinations, the central obsessions remain the same. And these are typically concerns and motifs that come to you as an artist coming of age. So I will begin by talking about some of the pictures I made as a graduate student at Yale in the mid-1980s or late 80s. And at the time, I was attempting to try to create a photographic language that hovered between some kind of realism and some kind of cinematic, fictive strategies. And I photographed, like I do now, primarily in a series of small towns in Massachusetts. And I was less interested in trying to create a pure documentive place of this place, and more interested in using the place to create my own narrative, my own story. And I've always been interested in photography and its relationship to narrative and to storytelling. And as you know, a photograph, unlike a film, and unlike literature or other narrative forms, is very limited in terms of the story it can tell. It's very compressed. But for me, that limitation always, I was drawn to that because the story remains open-ended. It remains unresolved. So these photographs, these pictures I made in graduate school are, I think, showcase, I think, probably in very modest terms, those core issues, those core stories that I was attempting to tell and continue to attempt to express in the pictures I make now. So that story, I guess you can never get away from yourself, that you're kind of stuck with your own preoccupations as much as you attempt to move away from them. I grew up in Brooklyn, in Park Slope, and my father was a psychoanalyst. And that was really, I think, crucial to my development. And there's a story that I've told many times that as a young child, I would attempt to listen. He had the office in the basement of our house. And I would have an early memory of putting my ear to the floorboard and attempting to hear what was going on beneath the surface of our living room floor. And I didn't quite know what he was doing down there, but I knew what was happening was secret. It was forbidden. It was mysterious. And I attempted to try to create a picture in my mind of what I thought I heard. And I think, in retrospect, this is probably my earliest aesthetic moment of, and I think that that is very emblematic of what I do now. It's like search in domestic spaces, look at sort of familiar situations and try to find an unexpected sense of mystery or wonder or anxiety. So in these early pictures, I would work trying to use color and light to tell a story. And I made them very modestly, just myself, in these situations, often with strangers. I still love this one. Which screen looks better, by the way? I'm not used to. I'm seeing my image right now in 4 different places. But the window, to me, this was very I still remember making this picture. This was a house looking over a baseball field at night in Pittsfield, in Massachusetts, and I remember being very struck by how the artificial light from the baseball field transformed the landscape, and the window became kind of a division between interior and exterior space, and the idea of using framing devices has stayed with me. That sense that you're always looking through a window or peering through something, that voyeuristic relationship to photography. And even in these early pictures, I was interested in, again, light and the nocturnal landscape. This was an early collaboration with the fire department, which I continued to do. But I convinced them that it was a good idea to set this shed on fire to make this picture. I love the impotent dribble there, which is great. This is one of the last pictures I made in this early body of work, and I always work in images. I think sort of I get images in my mind and try to make pictures from them. And I remember I wanted to make a picture of a middle-aged housewife lying on the floor, and I found someone to be in the picture, a stranger, and we arranged a time to make the picture. And I remember, as a sort of a young photographer, standing over her, and this very awkward psychosexual energy between us. And as I was making this picture, as if to confirm my shame about it, I saw a police car come up through the window, the window of her house, and he rang the bell, and she got up and answered, and he asked, "Well, are you the photographer I've heard who's been making all these pictures in and around town?" And I immediately confessed, and he said, "Well, I'm a photographer too." And it turns out that she had known him in the arranged meeting, and turns out he was the forensic photographer for the town of Lee. And we went down to the police department, and he wound up showing me all these haunting photographs of like homicides and drownings, and I was really struck by them. And But he kept asking, like, how can I make the grain, less grain and more contrast, or whatever. So for whatever reasons, I stopped making those pictures and knew that I wanted to push the work in a new place. And this is ends of series or bodies of work are always very terrifying for artists. It's like continue, you know, that never stops. And I didn't know what to do. So for one reason or another, I should explain that my parents had a cabin in Massachusetts, and that's how I wound up making all these pictures up there. And I moved into the cabin in Massachusetts and started building dirt piles in the backyard of the house for some unknowable reason. And if that sounds strange, it's made more strange by the fact that I don't think I ever developed any of those pictures. I made probably 500 of them over the course of the summer. So I don't have any.
All of you, out of my house.
I don't have any representations of that work. But I'll show you instead a couple scenes from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And if you remember, and I very much relate to the Richard Dreyfuss character, and if you remember, after he sees a series of extraterrestrial events over his suburban neighborhood, he starts building these totemic structures out of household materials. First with shaving cream, and then this great scene with the mashed potatoes. And as he does this, he continually says, this is important. This means something. And I think that's very much, it's a beautiful metaphor for what the artist does. The artist has kind of an obsessive imagination, and they feel the need this compulsion to make these objects and try to will them to mean something. And of course, as you do this, this is an alienating act, and it distances yourself from your family and your community. And then this activity culminates in, to me, one of the great moments in all of movie history. It's when he builds this enormous pile in his living room using materials from his backyard. And here, now it's a complete collapse of interior and exterior space, and the domestic and the nature, and the normal and the paranormal, and those are all oppositions that are really intriguing to me in my work. And again, the division between the artist and the community. And I love how the window is emblematic of that. So back to me. So these piles eventually wound up being the next series, which were called Natural Wonder. And they're pictures that were made entirely in my studio. this is before digital photography, so they were all painstakingly produced tableaus built in my studio, and they were very influenced by museum dioramas. And each image took me about a month to make, and they combined miniature with real scale, and this is a picture of a dead bird that I found, and flowers, and they're very, very involved in beauty and decay and a sense of wonder, and obviously very influenced by like Blue Velvet. That was like a pivotal film to me too. That really changed my life. There's a pile of butterflies.
Gregory, you own this one.
Oh, you own that one?
Haggerty, yeah.
Oh, great. Not this one over here? I really like that picture. I hope you don't own that one. That's a cast of my leg. I was going through a difficult time. But I was seriously going through a difficult time. While I was making these pictures, I was also having dreams of floating dreams, which my father would say was anxiety, a form of anxiety. But I followed those dreams and wound up making my next body of work, which was I returned to that same neighborhood that I was photographing in earlier and made my next body of work, which was Hover, which were these black and white photographs all of them made from the perspective of an elevated crane, from a tree surgeon's crane. And they were primarily all made in this one neighborhood. And I started doing these interventions on the street. And in these early pictures, they were done entirely without permits or without getting any permissions or anything. And they were all done with the people who lived on the street. So that woman's husband was a landscaper. We just one afternoon just put these it's dirt piles down the street, and so it was like she was planting these dirt piles. And here's a man sodding his street clothes. So you could see they were also very influenced by the Close Encounters imagery, and they were also very influenced by new topographic photography and earthwork. In this picture, I love the perspective of the floating perspective of being there but not there, which is like, I think, very characteristic of my work. And that idea of being present but also absent, and again, that kind of voyeuristic view. But I saw his building the sod, closing the street. I saw that as a kind of optimistic act because he was trying to make connections with his neighbors. So I want to contradict that in a way. So I called down to my assistant and told her to call the police and tell the police, call 911, tell them the police, tell them there's someone sodding the street closed. And that's what happened. That's a bear, the local dog catcher, and a line of Wonder Bread. And then the circle is another motif in my work, and I have another story about this one. I wanted to make a perfect circle of mulch in a backyard, and I found what I thought was the perfect location, and I knocked on the door of the home. There was no one home, so I wrote a note, and I said, "Dear homeowner, I want to make a photograph. I want to make a perfect circle of mulch in your backyard and photograph it from perspective of an elevated crane. Here's my number." And the very next day, there was one message on the answering machine. And I always regret that I didn't save that message, because I think it's such great advice to all students and artists in general. So all she said was, "Do what you have to do." And that's really exactly right. So the hover pictures, I think I did those over the course of like 2 summers. And I knew that the next body of work I wanted to get back into using color and large format. But I also was interested in using light in a more choreographed way. And during this time, I met a director of photography named Rick Sands, who I still work very closely with, who was a gaffer in movies. And we started using light in a more elaborate way, and using cinematic production. And none of us really knew what we were doing. We did these, like, again, very just off the cuff. We would tie into people's houses for electricity, and had a ragtag team of people helping us with putting lights in cranes. But it all felt like very exciting and filled with possibility. This idea of using light to tell a story, to describe meaning. And I started to realize that the only time where we could actually make the pictures was in Twilight, because it was the only time where the light of our artificial lights worked in concert with the ambient sun. So that became very emblematic to me. Well, obviously, I titled the body of work Twilight, not to be mistaken with the movie, by any chance. But Twilight, my pictures are about these in-between moments. They're about transitions between one place and another, and I think Twilight works within that, like between day and night, and that kind of mystery that comes out of that in-between moment. This is the first picture picture was done on a soundstage, but where is? Oh, that one, right? I thought I didn't have that one for a second. And then this picture was the first picture I did on a soundstage, and I did it at Mass MoCA. And I had always wanted to make a picture of a floating figure in a domestic space. And so when there was the opportunity to work on a soundstage for the first time, I knew immediately I wanted to do that. And we built a room, and then we built a tank around it and submerged it with water, and then put this figure in. And now we're transitioned into Beneath the Roses, which is, I guess, my most epic body of work. It was done over 8 years. Or 6 years, there were 8 productions. And at this point, we started making pictures on the scale of a small movie. But unlike Twilight, which are more fantastical, Beneath the Roses are much more about small psychological moments and that the pictures are about more, I think they're more psychological. And the landscape becomes much more important, and the relationship between the landscape and these small figures. This is hard to see. It's down that street, there's a pregnancy center, and I knew I wanted to make the picture about that detail. And the way I work is I drive around looking for locations, and an image will come to mind. Something will inspire it. And this teenage girl was pregnant with twins, and she had just come out of the pregnancy center, and I arranged to make a picture of her. And I liked the idea of her being on this corner with the empty street, yellow light. It wasn't until like late into making these pictures that I realized I keep using cars with the door open. Like, I wish somebody had told me that. I was doing that continuously. But I always use these it's kind of nondescript cars and nondescript sort of neighborhoods. And I think you probably noticed that I don't want the pictures to have any signifiers of one particular time or place. I want it to feel like it could be anywhere but nowhere. But I think the reason I use these cars over and over again, like I actually have an intern whose sole job when we're on productions is to look for these cars and convince the owners to put them into the pictures. But I know Stephen Shore was here recently, or fairly recently, and I was always a huge fan of Stephen Shore's work, and Joel Sternfeld's. And of course, his pictures were all made in the 70s. And so I think that I partially just inspired by those pictures and use those kind of cars in my photographs in reference to that. And then I continued to work on the soundstage, but much more interested in framing devices again, and looking from one space into another space into another space, and having that kind of claustrophobic sense of detail. That little boy's named Shane, and he was kind of following us around when we're like in one area making pictures, and I knew I wanted to make a picture of him. He was this small little boy, came from a very troubled family, and I like the idea of him being engulfed in this kind of beautiful light overlooking train tracks. It's a birthing scene. The architecture is based on the Bates Motel in Psycho. It's on the soundstage too. And then we did one production of winter snow pictures, which was by far the hardest group of pictures I think we ever did. I mean, it was partially because it was cold, partially because the light vanished early, and partially because there was no snow. So we wound up having to make snow in a lot of the pictures. We actually had snow makers make snow. Except for this one, which there was a snowstorm, which we, and this is done on the main street of Pittsfield in Massachusetts. And the town agreed to close off the main street for the entire day into the night so the snow would build up. So I'm going to show you some of the behind-the-scenes productions of the productions. First, on location. And you can see that we always use elevated cranes with big light sources. Rain machine. Making snow. Never going to do that again. And here's some pictures from the soundstage. And you can see the soundstage pictures we begin with, unlike the location pictures, we begin with sketches, architectural drawings. And then we build everything. One of the pictures I showed you that early picture of setting the house on fire. So I approached the city of Pittsfield about doing another one, and I met with the fire chief and said I want to set a house on fire. And the very next day, he gave me all these options here. So I'll show you a bit of the making of that picture. We wound up not burning the house on fire because it was more efficient to get a special effects guy to create a fake fire. And that's Rick.
Okay, turn on the fire and
my
the smoke.
director of photography.
That's fine. Cut it back, Nathaniel. Cut it back, cut it back, cut it back, cut it back.
That is so beautiful.
Okay.
Fucking amazing.
I don't think you hear the sound on this, but I just said it's fucking beautiful.
Go. Clear for
Translate.
for actors. Let's see. Okay, let me look at everyone's positions.
Let's see positions.
Okay,
So as you can see, I have a very intimate relationship with my
Is
subjects.
it her body or his? Her
That's
body
ironic.
towards the, and then look at, okay, perfect. Okay. Good. Let's start shooting.
Okay, good.
And you could also see for Beneath the Roses, I used the 8x10 camera, and the camera never moves. And we shoot a lot of film. And the reason for that is that I composite the pictures later in post-production. So that's why they have that
Okay, do it again.
amazing focus.
Going again.
What at 32? Okay, perfect. Position and hold.
Sweet.
And that's the final picture. You can see a lot of those kids were digitally exterminated. And then I'll end with showing one picture on another picture we did on the main street of Pittsfield, almost very close to that snow picture. And you can see we closed down the entire street and get all the traffic off, and then we have to get the cooperation of all the stores so we could put lights in.
Hello. Just a touch on this side. I don't know if you want to...
And it's also really important to say that there's a very short window of time where everything comes together to make a picture. And for me, that's what the entire process is about, like finding that perfect moment where everything recedes and there's this kind of perfect stillness.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear this, but I'm just...
Okay, D, they're starting the wet down now.
Got to keep the fire department busy, you know, always. But we always wet the streets to give reflections. That goes with the water theme of the show.
I'm going to have you start looking this way, and then once I'm in the camera, I'm just going to slowly have you look counterclockwise until I find your sweet spot. And then once we get it, we got it. I mean, there's like no, and just put your hands just like on your, just whatever, just what's comfortable. It's like all of a sudden this man's disappeared, but you're not really reacting. It's just like almost nothing, okay? All right.
I'm instructing her to do almost nothing, is what I said.
And fog it up.
Always use
way?
another
There you go.
use fog machines a lot. Tricks of the trade, you know.
Okay, have Jennifer just look a little bit away from camera now. Okay. Fog looks good. Nice, and then that's the beautiful. Try looking
So you can see it's
slightly
starting to
up.
come in there. My fan base.
Just very slightly towards camera. Keep going. Keep going more. The whole head, not the eyes.
So I'm instructing, there's a woman
And
in the
hold.
backseat of the car who's listening to my instruction in walkie-talkie.
Okay.
Just the minor, tiny, tiny changes.
Position and hold. Can I see it? 30 seconds out. This is prime time. Just quickly. Position and hold. And that's a wrap.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's it. Any questions? I really feel like you ready to take your test now? Like I feel like we're in it's going to be a written exam here in this room. Yes.
Question. With your subject or the people that are in your photograph, it has a cinematic feel to it, but people aren't acting at all, really. Do you tell people what you're looking for in the overall photograph, or do you just give them directions as to what to do in very specific ways?
Well, I have in my mind exactly what I want, but I don't want to tell them anything about that. And so when I have a idea for a picture, the very first thing I do is work with my assistant, Kazi, who I work very closely with, and we write a description, and it's like a paragraph. And it just basically says, we're looking down a street, there's a car, and a woman's getting out of the car, something like that. And that becomes the kind of the Bible or something, for the screenplay for that thing, and they read that. But by the time I get them on set, I know exactly how I want them to stand, and they're in their position. And as I said before, I want almost nothing from them, because the pictures are about, in the end, something that's very elusive. They're really about these moments in between moments. And so I work hard not to have any literal action. I want almost nothing to be happening. And whatever meaning comes out of the pictures, it comes out of the light and the color and the description. So, yeah, I don't want them to have motivation or sense of plot or anything like that. Yes?
Have you thought about filmmaking? I would think that would potentially be quite appealing.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm an enormously influenced by movies, but I don't think in terms of moving images. I think almost exclusively in terms of the single image. And I think that's probably related to the fact that I'm dyslexic and have a very hard time with linear thought generally. And so I've always thought, that's why I think photography is very appealing to me. It makes sense, it's just the frame of it. And the idea of this moment going to another moment is terrifying to me. And I do have obviously I know a lot of filmmakers and stuff, and I feel I think differently, they think differently than I do. And I admire them because of their ability to think about progression and editing and sound and all the stuff I don't have to think about, really, basically. And I could just privilege this one moment. That being said, I wouldn't, if the right situation came along, I would probably try it. It'd be the most expensive movie ever made with almost nothing happening in the movie.
When you select a town like that, do you contact the mayor and the police chief and everything to try to set up the situation that you're in?
Right. Well, at this point, I'm kind of a known factor, for better or for worse. But it's one of the reasons that I've stayed working in one place over and over again. I've been making pictures in this one place for 25 years now. And that I started very modestly and sort of built up, and I think that has given me a certain allowance to do things that I probably wouldn't normally be able to do, like close down a street or. And the town is very cooperative with me at this point.
Has it altered the town?
It's altered. It was funny, there's some of you might have seen this, a documentary that this guy Ben Shapiro's made recently that's been out, that he worked on making over 10 years. And it was recently, there was a screening, there's a movie theater now on that street, And we just recently, it was a screening on the street after a big snowfall last week, 2 weeks ago. And it was just like a weird hall of mirrors because the movie ends with this making of the brief encounters picture of the snow. So I was like, whoa, this is really weird.
Why did you choose that particular town, though?
I don't really know. It could be anywhere, but I think it has something to do with the fact that I would go there as a child. And I now live there part-time too. Anyway, yes?
Your images seem kind of like deliberately retro. Is there something that you don't like about sort of like a modern aesthetic?
I mean, if you compare it to Mad Men, for example, which I'm a huge fan of Mad Men. I think it's one of the great works of arts of the last decade. That's very particularly a timepiece. It's a period piece, very exact of a certain time. And I admire that, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, there is a kind of timeless quality in the pictures, but I don't want to locate it specifically to any particular moment or any place. But yeah, there is something, as I described before, like I want it to be outside of time in a way. If that makes sense.
I don't know if this was covered in the introduction, but the pictures seem very Edward Hopper-esque
Yes.
to me. The solitude, alienation, hardly any social interaction, lots of empty space. So is this a commentary on something?
All that good stuff, very timely for Valentine's Day, right? Well, Edward Hopper, yeah, I think he's one of the great artists. And I completely admire and connect to the sense of beauty and sadness that runs through the work, and the psychological aspect of the work and his use of light, all those things. So yes, I definitely feel influenced by that. But I think I bring my own particular sadness to it. Yes?
The photo of the woman floating in the living room, was she free floating, or did you have her positioned on?
She's on she's on a kind of like a foundation, like she's on something. Yeah. She was also by the end of it hypothermic, but that's another story.
Speaking of like the painterly qualities of the pictures of the photos, and the Hopper thing is one thing, it's pretty obvious, and also the thing of satirical, but there's one image in particular about midway through, and I couldn't focus on it quickly enough to really see exactly what's going on, but there's a woman standing under some trees, and it was lit, and it was in front, it reminded me very much of that, and I don't know if this effect in general or the image in particular was in your mind, but there's a Magritte painting of like a backyard where it's lit like it's night, but you can see it's daylight in the sky. And you can see daylight through the whole, call it by the trees, but the front was very much lit as it was a night scene. And I was wondering if that was an intentional effect, or particularly if you're familiar with that image.
I don't, no, probably not, but that's nice that, I mean, I like that you bring your own thing to it, you know, like, I've always said that I want each picture to remain elusive to myself. Like I don't want any I don't want to know what the pictures mean, because I want the viewer to bring their own.
Well, the diorama scenes had a very Magritte-like quality to them, very seamless, but particularly Magritte.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
So, I'm wondering about the element of chance in your work, and whether when you envision what you want to make a picture of, you always end up with what you think, or if there are elements of chance where something happens and it could
Right. Things always happen completely unexpectedly, and always. And I think I've said previously that I feel like the mystery of my pictures come from my sort of obsessive need to create this perfect world and the inability of doing so. So there's always failure. It's just representation fails you no matter what. But that's what drives you to make the next picture. And it's also those unexpected things like that teenage pregnant girl coming out from the pregnancy center, or almost in every single picture something happens outside of my control. To me, that's what makes it interesting, always. Yes?
I have a question. You have, be it minimalist, you have an engagement with the town of Pittsfield.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about the preview of the documentary last week or whenever it was. Was it a broad spectrum of people from the community there? And what was their response to the documentary? And what in general is the response to your work and your presence in the community?
I think people seem to like it. I think, I've been working there for so long, and that I am, as I said, this kind of known figure, for better or for worse, I think. And but I think the film has really added another kind of layer to the whole thing, because the film itself is its own body of work. It's like Ben Shapiro made that movie in over a 10-year period of time, and I had no part of it really, except for the fact I was in it, So, but I think people seem to like. I don't know. I don't know. For me, it was really hard to watch the movie. It was painful just to watch. I much prefer to be on the other side of the camera. Yeah.
I was wondering, almost all your photographs seem to me, maybe with the exception of the black and white series, to be very beautiful.
Yeah.
So, is that a very important factor for you? Can you imagine it was going to be black or neutral?
No. I mean, to me, the most important thing is to try to make the most beautiful picture I can. Like, absolutely. And using everything that I can to do it, light and color and hyperfocus and description and detail and atmosphere and rain and whatever, snow, like all of that is to create something that's really transcendent in a certain way. But at the same time, I want something to undercut that too. So I don't want something that's purely beautiful. I want something that's also psychologically complicated or alienated in some way, or difficult also. So I'm always looking for like oppositions, like tensions in the pictures. But first and foremost, I do want to make a beautiful picture. Absolutely. Yes?
You talk about making this perfect moment and finding that chance in those shots. And how do you feel about digital retouching and how that comes into your work? If you found this perfect moment as the shot's being taken, and then you go back and alter that perfect moment.
Right.
How much does that play?
Well, that's part of that's an interesting point, actually, because to me, my favorite part of the entire process is the moment I'm standing in front of the camera watching this moment happen. Like, we've worked so hard, sometimes months, sort of working towards this moment, and then everything else recedes, and it's just this, for that brief moment, my life seems to make sense, and there's this beautiful encounter, and then that's over. and then you're wound up with like a bunch of 8x10 film, and then you have to sort of try to puzzle it all back together, which is impossible. So I do scan the 8x10 and work for months trying to composite, and then it becomes something else. So it becomes something other than that moment.
So is it much of the process then of culminating into that moment of
Yeah.
achievement?
For me.
I mean, then it's two different.
And then the picture, then the picture becomes something else that is also, but it's become something other than that moment that I experienced, you know.
Gregory, thank you. I hope that all of you will join us for a brief reception over at the museum and see the exhibition and see.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much.